Welcome back to the Piping Pastor Theology Talks. Today we'll be continuing our discussion in classic theology by taking a look at soteriology. Today I am having a wee cup of tea and I'm smoking my Capstan Navy Cut in my Curtit Meerschaum Churchwarden pipe. Well, we had spent a good deal of time talking about creation theology, or theological cosmologies, more to the point, and theological anthropology. So now that we've kind of set the stage from the perspective of the world, the universe, and people, now we can get to what are we doing about these people? Soteriology, simply put, is the study of salvation in Christian theology. It is the discussion of who is saved, what are they saved from, who is doing the saving, and by what means are people being saved. Those are the questions that are asked. However, I have found that while it is not incorrect to be anthropocentric with regards to Christian theology, because we're talking about, God talk, the relationship between God and humanity, in my view, we need to incorporate all of creation when we talk about the salvific nature of God's relationship to the created world, created universe. Because God did not create humanity out in the middle of nothing, right? The entire universe is part of God's creation, and we know that God's creation was good. God saw that it was good. And we also see that sin entered the world through one man. Of course, we've discussed this in theological anthropology about how that actually works and so forth, but sorry, I really love this Navy capstan. One of my favorite tobaccos and one of my favorite pipes. So forgive me if I pause every now and again. But so we've discussed the idea of sin entering in through corruption of the natural world, of everything being perfect and wonderful and good in God's view, and then humanity kind of messing things up. We talked about what that means from a scientific perspective and from a developmental perspective in our discussions of theological anthropology, so I won't belabor that point. So we can then have a tendency to think of salvation just needing to come through humanity, needing to be for humanity, from humanity. However, corruption of the natural world, the imperfection of the natural world, is something that needs to be dealt with as well. So when we talk about humanity being saved, we shouldn't have such a narrow view. We shouldn't think that it's just about God saving humans, and that's the end of the story, because the rest of creation is affected in that relationship as well. God has a relationship with all of God's created order. God is present in all of God's created order. So when we think in terms of salvation, we need to think about not just who, but what. And I'm not advocating, for pantheism, Gaia 2.0, or anything else like that, saying that the earth possesses personhood and that the person should be saved. But I am saying that we should think about all of creation being saved. Now, that first part of the question might seem relatively easy to answer, right? Who is being saved? Humans or the universe? But in light of our technological advances and the possibility of transhumanism and various different things that science is currently engaging with, that question can become quite a sticky wicket. What I mean by that? Let's say, hypothetically, that humans are able to upload their consciousness into a machine, or we develop a physical apparatus that is able to be implanted into a human brain that was bereft of consciousness that then regains consciousness after a fashion due to some kind of technological marvel. Something which would have been akin to science fiction, 30 years ago, even 20 years ago. But now is not only within the realm of possibilities, there are teams of scientists who are working on just that. So let's say there's leaps ahead in quantum computing, and we are able to then upload our consciousness into a machine that can then effectively go on indefinitely. I won't say forever, but for a very, very long time. Once that consciousness is then transferred into a machine, is it possible for that machine-centered consciousness to receive salvation? Or something even closer at hand, artificial intelligence. Of course, we deal with AI on varying degrees in various different ways. But let's go full science fiction mode and say, okay, let's say Skynet does happen, right? That some AI model becomes self-aware. Now, there's a whole series of problems with how that happens scientifically. Now, if you speak to a scientist or engineer who works in artificial intelligence, they'll tell you even algorithms that could write with algorithms at some point stop because they cannot program desire into an algorithm. So the idea of, the Matrix happening or Terminator 2 or what have you, not really on the horizon yet, but scientific discoveries happen in large breakthroughs. So if a computer does gain self-awareness, can that computer then experience salvation? You see, the question of who being saved is no longer quite an open and shut case and dealt with rather easily. Which is why soteriology is going to be a series of videos much like theological anthropology was. Because there are some tough questions to wrestle with. Talked about the Imago Dei, what that means to be created in God's image, and the possibility of the entire universe being created in God's image. But then what about the things that we as humans create? Well, I would submit to you that those things additionally are under God's sovereign control. It's like the famous line from the Water Babies. If you've never read Water Babies, then it's definitely worth a read. For those of you outside the United Kingdom, it's a good read. And when I first moved to Scotland and began doing my research there, it was kind of assumed that was a childhood nursery story that we'd all heard, and those of us from the Americas were like, no, that's a new one on us. But there's a great line in The Water Babies where the creator says, anyone can create something. It takes something special to create something that then creates other things. In a sense that the creative nature of God that creates humanity to create. But in the end, we all fall under the sovereign control of the eternal creator, who is God. See, God creates because God is a creator, in the same way that an artist paints because they're an artist. God is who God presents God's self to be. And in that, God is creative. And God is creative to the next level beyond what we as humans may do. God creates things that may create other things, that may further create themselves. That is the power of God's creation and God's creative abilities. So we need not wrestle with the question of whether our created consciousness, our artificially intelligent created consciousness, is have the ability to be to fall under the salvific grace of Jesus Christ, because everything falls under God's sovereign control, and everything under God's sovereign control also may receive the saving grace of Christ. It's not as if we're coming up with something that God didn't foresee. Remember, we live in linear time, of course, but God exists everywhere and every when. So God is not surprised. There's an entire conversation about that and prayer changing God's mind and can God be surprised and so forth. And no, I don't believe so. Because God simultaneously exists in 10,000 BC and 20,000 AD right now, as we speak, in this moment, because those are places as well as times. God is everywhere and every when. So the act of Christ on the cross, the sovereign act of Christ on the cross, covers everything. So in the end, if we achieve the ability to create artificial intelligence that is fully self-aware, that it does attain full personhood in view of our creative abilities, then yes, I do believe that can achieve salvation as well. And I do believe that is something that God will not be surprised by. Because something that is fully conscious will also be fully aware of the divine reality. If something is not fully aware of the divine reality, if it is not nefesh hayah in the sense of human consciousness and spirit and soul and divine relationship and so on and so forth, then that is where it becomes reconciled to God through the other part of God's creation, in the same way that physical reality becomes reconciled back to God and achieves that perfect existence that was there prior to the quote-unquote fall of humanity. So in either way you look at it, either artificial intelligence attaining full consciousness and awareness of a divine reality and then making a choice if that consciousness chooses to name Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, which we'll get into that in a little while, or if artificial intelligence does not get to the point of attaining full consciousness and awareness of a divine reality and is yet just another created artifact of humanity, then it too will become reconciled back to God in God's own timing. So the first question, soteriology, who is being saved? The question is, who and what is being saved? And it's either reconciliation or salvation, but either way, we see everything coming back to God. Well, that is it for this section, soteriology. At our next discussion, after discussing the who, we will discuss what we are being saved from. So we'll be discussing the nature of sin in a bit more detail than we got into in theological anthropology, what that means and how we are saved from it. So until next time, I'm going to finish this lovely pipe. Hope you all have a great week. And as always, happy reading.